Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Jack Hemingway. Tonight we're going to begin our show with an activity most of us took part in when we were young kids, much to the disgust of our mothers. If you grew up near a pond, chances are you spent a fair amount of your summer vacations catching frogs and toads and maybe small snakes, or maybe even scooped up a few tadpoles, put them in a tank to see them transform from fish into frogs. Well, if you're still chasing amphibians and frogs when you grow up, you're referred to as a herpetologist. Going hunting for frogs and snakes is called herping.
Boy, he's pretty excited.
This fellow is a Great Basin spadefoot toad. He is specially adapted to live in arid sagebrush regions like those of southern Idaho. In the springtime, spadefoots take advantage of temporary waters such as ponds and irrigation ditches to breed. When the mating season is over, they leave the ponds behind and burrow into the earth to escape the heat.
They may stay underground for possibly years at a time under bad conditions.
Oh, really?
They're really adapted to deserts and droughts.
The spadefoot derives its name from the black spade-like protrusions on its hind feet. They are used for digging.
When they dig backwards into the ground like that. I don't know, maybe we could get him to dig here, I don't know.
Herpetologist Chuck Peterson is a biology professor at Idaho State University. He's never lost his childhood fascination for amphibians and reptiles, growing up to become the quintessential scientist with a winsome curiosity for all things that hop, croak, and crawl.
You know, I don't know why a particular animal speaks to a particular person, but I think most people feel that way towards some type of organism, either a plant or an animal. And I've always felt this way about amphibians and reptiles since I was a little kid. That's typical, too, of herpetologists, scientists that study amphibians and reptiles, as they start out as, child herpetologists, and they just sort of never grow up. Boy, you can sure see they sure blend in with the sand there, don't they?
In no time at all, nothing remains but the toad's eyes. He blinks and disappears completely, burrowing into the protection of the cool, damp earth.
Well, they're fairly, cryptic animals. They have a low visibility. They're hard to see. They, are what we call ectothermic. They get their heat from the environment, and they have about 1/10 of the energy requirements that a mammal or a bird has. Gosh, where is he? There he is. You got it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Although amphibians and reptiles tend to be grouped together, there are some very distinct differences. An amphibian has a thin, moist skin, but a reptile skin is dry, thick, and scaly. Reptiles, snakes, turtles, and lizards, begin life as a miniature version of their parents, either born live or hatching from eggs. Amphibians borrow their name from the Greek amphibios, meaning living a double life. They start out as an aquatic larvae, or tadpole, and eventually develop into a semi-terrestrial animal like a frog, salamander, or toad. This noisy fellow is a western toad, a distant cousin of the spadefoot.
He has a much rougher skin and much more prominent bumps and like warts on there. Those are actually concentrations of poison glands. That's how they protect themselves.
This species was once found throughout the West, but in the last few decades, western toad populations have been declining. According to a recent study, in the state of Colorado, the western toad has disappeared from 80% of its historical range, an alarming trend among many amphibian species that seems to be occurring worldwide.
And the reasons for those declines are not well understood. And we're concerned about that for the animals themselves, because they're important components of the ecosystem, and also because they may be telling us something about what's going on in the environment.
Some of the decline can be attributed directly to pollution and habitat loss, human-caused problems that have escalated dramatically in recent decades. In the next 30 years, up to 1/2 of our Earth's species could face extinction due to worldwide deforestation, development, and destruction of our wetlands. In the United States alone, we are draining our wetlands at the rate of an acre a minute. But what is especially alarming is the fact that many of the drastic declines in some amphibian populations are occurring in relatively pristine areas such as Yosemite and Grand Teton National Parks. In these protected areas, habitat loss is not a factor. So why are amphibians disappearing? This is a question haunting herpetologists everywhere. Here at Idaho's Bruneau Dunes State Park, researcher Chuck Peterson is looking for some answers. A cooperative study, spearheaded by Idaho State University, has been launched to determine how our state's amphibians are faring. Population trends will be monitored on a weekly basis by fish and game biologist Mike McDonald, and an interesting new technology will be part of the effort.
Okay, this is basically what's called a data logger. We're interested in determining what species are present at particular locations and under what conditions they're active and calling. So that's like a small field computer that will turn on the tape recorder every few minutes and then measure the weather conditions and then turn the tape recorder off.
We'll find it.
Along with the sound of the toad's mating call, the computer also records water and air temperatures and wind speed at the time of the call, all of which may affect mating activity. It also registers shortwave radiation. Some scientists speculate that due to a decrease in the ozone layer, ultraviolet radiation may be a leading cause of some of the amphibian decline in higher elevations.
Because of a number of their characteristics, like they develop in the water and then undergo metamorphosis and then come out onto land, and their thin, moist, permeable skins, they're very susceptible to, say, chemicals in the environment, changes in radiation, and so forth. So they may be very sensitive indicators of environmental change. And for that reason, what's happening to them may be an indicator of what may be happening, down the line for other organisms, including us. Okay, now we got to put this in the water somewhere.
Just as the last wire is put into place, a rainstorm blows through the area, leaving behind windy, unsettled weather. The blustery day gradually yields to an eerie dusk, and with the darkness come the night sounds.
I would sure be excited if we could see them actually calling. That would be the best.
Springtime is the best time of the year to go herping. The male toads are out in force trying to attract females with their gruff mating calls.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a woodhouse. He's getting ready for his nightly activity. They come back and they sit on the edge of the water like that and they rehydrate. There's a ventral part of the skin there that's specially adapted for picking up the moisture, and it's right on their belly.
Mike tries to get the toad to respond to a tape recording of mating calls. The toad's not buying it.
I would sure be excited if we could see them actually calling. That would be the best.
Only the males have these large vocal sacs under their chins. This series of still photos shows the toad's calling posture. He braces himself firmly with his front legs and then lets go with his call. The dark patch at his throat expands dramatically with each croak.
These are called nuptial pads. When they're mating, the toes here, this gets enlarged and it gets roughened, and that helps him grab the female in implexus.
Herpetologists are just beginning to unravel the complex world of these creatures. The apparent decline of some amphibian population points to the critical need for intensive, long-term study. But it's often simple, natural curiosity that builds the foundation for great scientific discoveries. So the rest of the evening is spent combining biology with the pure, childlike pleasures of pursuing things that hop, croak, and crawl.
I want to get a good picture of that, too.
They've been called gnomes of the night. They're part of a world we often overlook, but cannot afford to lose. For not only will that indicate that we've ravaged the earth for future generations, it may mean that our own kids and grandkids will never experience the delightful pleasure of chasing a frog on a summer evening.
Here's another woodhouse.
I think these guys have a lot of character.